think about half an hour into the waiting time, he got very impatient and said that, we can't be waiting here forever. The president can't make us wait. So he asked Ashu Chawla to go and tell the president's office that we're going now. Ashu Chawla came back in a few minutes and he said, well, please wait because the president's coming out of the meeting that he's in right now and he will come here very shortly. And within a few minutes, President Zuma came in to the meeting room. He was apologetic. He said he was sorry that he had a lot of guests that day and a lot of pending work that needed to be done. Although it was a Sunday, it had been a heavy morning for him. And he came in and sat down. So there was a certain protocol that was followed for these meetings, at his residence. The president sat on a particular chair. Then the head of the delegation, which was Muxim Williams, sat in the chair next to him. Then Nazim Hoa, and then the Gupta brothers would sit on a couch opposite them. And then across the table from there is where Arun Agarwal and I sat for these meetings. So the very first meeting started off like this, and we found it a little funny, because when we were told that we will go to the president's house and have a meeting for 2 hours, Arun and I, who had come in from India, we were a little, we thought it was a little funny that the head of state would have 2 hours to dedicate to a new media television station which has not even started yet. And we thought that that Atul Gupta was probably exaggerating, that we'd probably get 5 minutes with the president and we'd be ushered out. But at the end of that meeting, we were really surprised because not only did the president take a very detailed briefing about the project. He asked us questions, kept a copy of the report with him and said that he's going to keep the copy, study it, and next time when we meet, he would ask a few more questions and give a few more suggestions.
Just on that, what exactly did you present to the former president at that meeting? That is, we're talking about the first meeting. Okay, so we presented to him what we were told by Atul Gupta, which is an outlook on how the station would be, because we had already commissioned the design of the studio, we'd already commissioned the logo and the name and all of that. So the logo was commissioned. Also, a status report on how the project was headed, the various things about procurement of equipment to the design and fabrication of the studio, a status report really on how things were. Also, he wanted me to prepare a note on how the content of this television station would be different from what already exists in South Africa. So in terms of the look and feel of the station, how are we going to be different there? So it was, in a sense, a report which had all the details about the station. It was a status update on where the project was at, something of a shareholder review kind of a presentation, more than a kind of presentation that you would give the head of state on a formal kind of a meeting. So at that point, the name of the station was already known? Yes. It had been decided? Yes. Okay. Were you present when this decision was taken as to what the station was going to be called? No, I was not present when that decision was taken, but I believe there was a meeting before the first meeting that I went into, where President Zuma and the Gupta brothers had a meeting, perhaps with Nazim and Muxim, where the president had suggested to them that it should be called, like CNN, it should be ANN, Africa News Network, where there would be an African perspective of news to international news. Like CNN was an Atlanta-centric perspective of world news, an American journalist from China, India, Africa, telling the world about what is happening there. The idea was to have an Africa News Network, much on the same lines, where a South African journalist would, to start with, would report on South Africa, but the idea was to have a South African journalist reporting from across the world, much like what CNN was doing. And when the first meeting happened, I very distinctly remember Mr. Ajay Gupta telling the president that, look, sir, we're calling it ANN7 and this is just like you suggested. And we're putting a 7 because ANN was already taken. So we did the next best thing, which is put a numeric at the end of it. And we found that name was not taken. So we decided to take that. And President Zuma seemed to appreciate that a lot. Also, I think this is something that they played a lot during these meetings. They would keep telling me that the president, when you speak with him, should feel like whatever he's said we are listening to it and we are executing that. But they would also say that we will listen to what he says, and if we like it, we'll execute it. If not, we won't. So that was a sense that I was getting about how they were dealing with President Zuma. Also, I got a sense that they had a very a good rapport with the president. They had very good ties. When we went into these 3 meetings, there was occasion when we were in a visiting room, and there would be relatives of the president, his daughter. In one instance, I remember, and they greeted him each other very warmly. The Gupta brothers seemed to know everybody in the family on a first name basis, almost like they were family. So that's something that I found in these meetings. Also, President Zuma was very warm to them. I would also, I think, significantly say that these meetings happened after the Waterkloof incident. So if at all I had any doubts in my mind whether that had soured relationships, the relationship between the president and the Gupta family, I would say no, absolutely not, because the warmth with which they met in those meetings, there was nothing that would indicate that the Waterkloof incident had any impact on the relationship that they shared.
Yes. So then, so we're still at the first meeting.
Yes.
So these discussions are taking place. What was the end result of that meeting? What was resolved at that meeting?
Well, these meetings were cut up into 2 parts. The first part was where the television team would present to the president the status on how the project was proceeding. The second half was the New Age and other businesses which the Gupta brothers wanted to discuss. And during the second part, Arun Agarwal and I were asked to move out of the meeting and stay out because that was something that they didn't want us to be part of. So at the end of the first meeting, the presentation was given. The president said that he's going to take a look at the presentation. He asked us to leave a copy with him. And he said that when we meet next, he is going to give us feedback on the same, suggestions, and also how we could improve this further.
Yes. And then, so then after that meeting, then I would take it that you left. When you left, did you all go?
We all went together because we had come in our car and we had gone back in the same car. The other parts of the delegation, which is the Gupta brothers, Muxim Williams and Nazim Hoa and Ashu Chawla, came afterwards. But what I found out from the conversation that we had, post that meeting, was that there were other issues related to the New Age advertising and also the TNA business briefings that were aired on SABC were also discussed. If there were certain ministers who they had difficulty approaching to get for those interactions, they would ask President Zuma to use his influence to get them in there. Also, if they wanted a particular ministry to pay for the venue and details like that, and there was reluctance there, they would go to him to get that thing sorted out. Yes.
When you arrived at this meeting, were you formally introduced to the former president?
Yes, I was, because, like I said, there was a pecking order, there was a protocol there. So Muxim Williams was the one who was heading the delegation. The Gupta brothers then introduced, I think it was Ajay Gupta, if I'm not mistaken. He said that there are 2 new people here for this meeting, and then he introduced Arun Agarwal and me to the president. So he greeted us very warmly. They shook our hands and sat down on his chair before the meeting started.
So other than you then making a presentation to him as to what you had done and what your plans were about the station, did the president give you any input to it, or did he simply say, look, thank you, I will consider what you've put up and I'll get back to you?
To the best of my knowledge, he, in the very first meeting, there were, since he had come in from that meeting and also he had come back after some time, he had taken
the document from us and said that he's going to get back
Yes.
with more inputs as we go
Yes.
along.
All right.
So he did not make any input or any substantive input at that meeting to the presentation.
If I'm given permission to refer to the contents of my book, because that is based on a diary that I was maintaining at that time and an immediate recollection, because this was written in 2013. If I'm given permission,
Yes,
I would just want to cross-check this. And
you can do that.
Thank you, Mr.
That relates to the first meeting, eh?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
You quote from your book there, Mr. Sundaram, if I may just direct your
Yes.
attention. You quote from your book starting from page 4.
Yes.
Yes. Paragraph 18, paragraph 19.1. Yes. You're quoting from pages 94 to 104 of your book.
Yes.
Yes. Where exactly do you want to make the reference? Or do you just want to... You've dealt with what happened...
I think he just wants to have
Just
to run
or
through
just
his
to run
eyes
through it.
and,
All right.
and see
just
if,
to jog my memory
refresh your
to see.
memory.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, do that.
Thank you.